Brent, Mike, you guys hear me okay?
We
Hear you great.
can. Good morning. Good morning.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get started.
All right.
So if you are here today to learn more about outsourcing integrations or why you would look to integrate your tech stack, you are in the right spot. Joining me here today, so I am Melissa Bell, the Director of Marketing at Venn Technology, but your hosts for the webinar today are Brent Bertolio. He is our Director of Business Growth. He has several years in the industry and is a big Liverpool and Longhorn loving fan. I love a good alliteration, so hope that.
They're playing in like 45 minutes, I think.
Brent, you can't cut the webinar early to go watch the game, so please hang with us until the
I thought this was a live stream of the game. Sorry, I forgot it was the webinar.
And then moving over to Mike. So Mike Wood is also on Brent's team, and he is an account executive with many, many years of industry experience. He's a certified master gardener, and as his alter ego picture here would tell you, he is very construction savvy. And he has a name that seems to fit the part.
Absolutely.
That's interesting.
That last name.
Mike Wood. Is that like an actor name? You changed your name to get into the
I did. I totally did.
It does seem like kind of a stage name.
It does, doesn't it?
I want to be Brent Hammer.
Maybe in your next life, Brent.
Maybe.
All right, so moving on to the agenda, we hope you will learn from this webinar, and what we are really passionate about and want to talk about is a little bit of how the role has changed specifically for CFOs, anyone kind of working that financial planning and accounting, reasons why you, if you sit in that seat, why you would look to integrate your tech stack. And then we'll talk through a few common integration use cases for the finance and accounting teams. Although, as we know from the research, you finance and accounting teams touch many different parts of the organization, which is kind of why we're having this webinar. And then we'll talk through some options for integrating your software, and then we'll leave time for Q&A, but we love interactive sessions. So please, if you think of something or have a question while we're talking through something, send it through the chat or the Q&A in Zoom, and we will be sure to get it addressed. Yep. All right, with that, I'm going to hand it off to you, Brent.
All right, let's roll. So as Mel mentioned just a second ago, the reason we're here is to talk about how things have changed in the finance world, particularly in that CFO, kind of the leader of the finance team, you could say controller as well, in their seat. And then why is it important to think about integrating your systems, automating your systems? So with prospects that come in the door, with new people that we meet, obviously that's a great time for us to explain what we do. But even with our existing customers or partners, we've got a project we did, but sometimes they don't fully understand everything we do. So before we go further, let me take like 10, 15 seconds just to describe who we are, what we do, because we have prospects and customers and partners all on this call. Then at a high level, we are experts in integrations and automations. It doesn't matter the systems. We're experts in getting that data, doing what we need to do with that data inside a middleware tool, and then passing that off into the target application. We also do CRM work with HubSpot and Salesforce. So as we talk about the changes in the CFO's landscape, it's not just about the finance tool. It can be about other parts of the organization that we can assist just to make sure we're getting that time back, right? And we'll talk more about that. So as Mel kind of threw up here, the role of CFO has obviously changed. In a more traditional world, and my parents are CPAs, so I've heard all the talk in the lingo at the dinner table. Long gone are the days of just running the budget and then making sure the P&L balances and that kind of stuff. The CFO is now a critical point in the strategy of a business from a financial perspective, of course, but just understanding ROI, understanding how our departments can be more efficient and effective. So what we're seeing just high level in this role, the applications are changing, the job responsibilities are changing, and the involvement, most importantly, into other parts of the business. They're getting more, at bats with different teams, getting more, I like to say, Nima-washi, more involvement and buy-in from their seat into these other roles. That's my perspective, right? We talked about Mike. He's got a ton of experience in this world. So guys, Mike not only has a lot of experience in the ERP space, but he also has an accounting background. So I'm sure back in his day, he probably used an abacus to do some of that counting before moving on to the calculators and so forth, right? So Mike, what have you seen over the last couple of decades in how that CFO has really transitioned from more of that traditional mindset to cloud-based accounting and the strategy with other parts of the organization?
Well, I like Brent has said, I've been selling a long time. I've been selling to CFOs probably 20 plus years. And in that 20 plus years, in the old days, a CFO, controller, they had basically just two functions. One is to account for every dime the company ever made and to make sure that that dime was properly used and recorded. And then the second thing was to just make sure that the accounting department was properly staffed and that it ran to the best of its ability. But lately, Brent, probably in the last, people change, when it really started happening, and nobody really knows why. Some people blame COVID. Some people blame the great migration of people all over the world doing it to accounting departments, whatever. But in the last 5 or 6 years, there's been a lot of changes. It's every day a CFO calls me and says, Mike, I'm worried about cybersecurity. I need to upgrade my IT. And the one that really, just fries my brain is procurement. I can't believe how CFOs are working with purchasing departments hand in hand now. In my day, when I was working with purchasing, when I was actually working in an accounting department, we hated those guys. We never talked to them. We always thought of them as a bunch of cowboys just running around spending money freely, So nowadays it's not that way. They all have to join hands and sing Kumbaya,
Yeah, we all have our skill sets, right? We need people that are gas pedals that are pushing the business forward. But at the same time, I'm extremely appreciative of people that can slow me down, keep me in check. Spoiler alert, guys, salespeople are not the most detail oriented. So don't let us into your finance tool because we'll mess it up. That's why you guys are amazing at what you do and keep us all accountable, right? The good little pun there intended. Let's talk about how we actually go about this. So not only the change in the functions, but how we actually perform these tasks has changed. I mentioned, tongue in cheek, the abacus. My dad literally has the abacus sitting on his shelf as just a reminder of this is how things were done in the past, obviously well before his time and whatnot. But now we have cloud-based ERPs, right? Everything is in the palm of your hand right here in your phone. And what we've seen, and Mel, I'd love for you to speak to this. We've seen a massive increase in the number of applications that organizations are using, so much so that they're just siloed. So you can see here, the average number in the SaaS SaaS tool for an organization is well over 240, which blows your mind. And there's some crossover. You've got 4 different teams running 4 different task management systems. Because they're not talking to one another. They haven't had that cohesion where the C-level is looking at all departments and pulling that in. So I mentioned, Mel, you attended a conference lately where you kind of pulled this number back. What did they share during that time about some of the disparities and how this is actually working inside of organizations?
Yeah, Brent. So this came out of a HubSpot inbound conference. So, there was a lot of marketers there. So there was definitely a heavy marketing focus in terms of how many apps marketers use to get their job done. But I went away and kind of put together this graphic thinking about our, different partners and clients that we work with, and then the tools that we use here internally, and kind of reflected on how easy it is to add a new SaaS app, especially when department heads are given their own budgets, for example. So if I have a budget in marketing and I can go add a SaaS application for $10, $20, $30 a month or more, that's something that I can go spot check. I have the room to do it. if everybody kind of has that flexibility and is empowered to do it, you can turn around and see that, you know, you've added tools to your company within functions that probably aren't talking to each other and may not be integrated very quickly. And not all of them need to be, right? Like my design tool doesn't necessarily need to be integrated to Salesforce, but HubSpot, a tool that we use, should certainly be integrated to Salesforce, and it might even need to be integrated to Sage Intacct, because we're you know, creating deals and opportunities, and there's customer information that at some point we need to invoice. So I definitely think that it's really sobering when you kind of really start to reflect on how easy it is for different functions to add applications. And if there's not a feedback loop or lines of communication, then you can quickly stack up lots of apps well into the 200s, and then also realize that you're missing out on opportunities to connect the customer journey in that process.
Yeah. You know, it was crazy when you shared that stat with me. I'm a big Apple lover. So I work on Macs, and I went to my applications folder, and I just kind of did a quick math of the number of applications I had installed on my device. A little different. That's more kind of the personal machine, but it does reflect, even though tools are web-based, I like to use applications on my physical device. And I'm ashamed to say it was more than 50, 60, but it was certainly less than 240. So there's your range. I had a lot. And I can just imagine that you have the same, and Mike is the same. And we share some, we don't share some. It's crazy, right? But you think about, why do we do this? Like, how do we go about it? When we're thinking about from the sales side, hey, I need to manage my pipeline better. What are the tools out there that can help me do that? Obviously, we have Salesforce, right? And we can run opportunities in there. But then you have other applications that specialize in revenue management, that specialize in drip campaigns with, you know, things like outreach, like cold calling and so forth, all these external stuff that need to connect in. And the reason they exist is because they're the best at what they do. They've said, we're not going to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. We're going to focus on what we do well and what we know. And then we're going to make those systems talk. And some of those, we'll get into this later, have standard integrations that are free or very, very minimal cost. And some of them don't have anything, and you can customize it. But I think that leads us into our kind of next topic, the best of breeds application, right? You got these 242. Hopefully one of the reasons you have them is because they do what they do well, and they help you grow, scale, maintain accountability, and so forth. But when you go that route, there's a disconnect. There's all these different things that aren't working together. They're just doing what they do really, really well. So Mike and I were actually talking about this the other day, and, you know, put some of these thoughts together. Mike, why don't you run through what are some of the things that we've seen, some of the challenges, right, without connecting these applications together?
Yeah, you know, the couple of the biggest problems is, one, like in that last graphic that Mel was showing, it was good to put those applications in circles, right? Because these applications are in what is called silos. And those silos, everything works great within those silos, but they don't work with each other. I want to tee up the next slide for you too, Brent, because I love the example you give with that next slide. But when I was working through college, I worked at a car dealership in accounting. And at that car dealership, we had a discrepancy. It was a little over $9,000. And I mean, that didn't sound like a lot of money now, but back then that was a whole car. It was the price of an entire car. And that car, we didn't know, did somebody steal one? Did we lose it? Did we not get it delivered? Where'd it go?
Yeah.
So the controller asked me to find it. And you know, I found it. It took me 3 weeks to find it. And it wasn't just one smoking gun. It was like 15, 16 other errors. And they all compounded to equal that $9,100. And, you know, we used to call it creepage. Every month we would do our monthly reports, close our month, do our monthly reports. And then we'd give them to upper management, and we'd say, hey, we have creepage of about $9,000 one way or another. And so, you had this gap. Okay, we made this much profit, but you can, it's within a window of 9,000 positive or 9,000 negative.
Yeah.
And it, that was just because so many people touch the data, and that's not good. That's a bad thing. Back then it was, we had no other choice, but today's world, you got a choice. And, that whole touching the data, you don't want to do it ever. It'll just mess up your reporting. It just all kinds of things. And with that, let's go to.
You're talking about the bullet point 3 here, the manual workaround process. That was a part of it. Manual workarounds and processes. This idea of manual work. So tying this to individual apps being siloed, they're good at what they do, but if you don't have your Salesforce humming on the sales side with parameters around what people can change, can't change, approval processes in place, and then once all that's buttoned up, seamlessly moving it to finance to go collect an invoice, right? And you have people manually putting stuff here, manually doing stuff here, it creates those errors. And then use the great word compound, right? You can't, in finance, it's so valuable, the idea of compounding interest. And on the good side, obviously it can be bad too. But this idea of like this compound error state can just destroy your organization from the inside out. You say there was a little over $9,000 worth of a car back then. But that was done, I think you told me, like 18 months prior. What did the book show for 18 months where you were off pace and you didn't know it? You were reporting numbers that weren't true. Not to mention, you spent 3 weeks working on this, and what is your time worth, right? Because of this one error, and it just compounded over time. So this is the idea. This is the reason that we want to stop the swivel chair. We don't want you to type data over here and then swivel your chair and type data over here into this other system. Connect them together, and you have a seamless workflow. So going into the topic you just mentioned, just think about this idea. We'll run through this real quick. This idea of there's an average 1% of errors done with manual processes. Now, good thing for the most part, a lot of people that do manual work are detail-oriented people, right? You do a level in the front end to hire the right person to have the accountability to know, I need to make this right. But even still, 1% is extremely high when you start talking about that compounding effect and how this can actually impact your projection numbers on cash in the door, your projection number on what your expenses will be. It just adds up over time. So if you apply this to your everyday, 1 in every 100 things you do, a particular task, just think how much time you spend going back and redoing that. And is it truly a 1-for-1? If you spend an hour here and you have to redo it, is it an hour or is it an hour and a half at that point? Because sometimes it takes more time to undo and redo something, right? So it's extremely valuable to make sure you're getting it right the first time. And obviously integrating systems together can help that, right? So let's talk about some of the things.
Brent, just for a moment too, we've talked a lot about the implications of that on the person who maybe is touching the data, their time, and that then takes away from other tasks, that they're to advance the organization and understand business performance. But it really does affect the customer experience too. It can create delays.
Good point.
I talked to a CFO, one of our clients a few weeks ago, who, again, he's a CFO, but he's also managing procurement, and he has a supply chain and IT function that he's also managing. And he gave an example of if they had an integrated Salesforce and Sage Intacct. Prior to that, they had a resource on the finance team that was hand keying in information from Sage Intacct into Salesforce so that then their operations team could book and install. So he said prior to the integration, it may not even get to that team member for a week. So now you're delaying install by a week for that client. Imagine if you're able to sync that over instantaneously, which they are now, and they're able to book work quicker, install it faster, hopefully deliver, and service more customers as a result of it. So
and get cash in the door.
Yes. Yeah.
Be able to invoice it and be accurate. Like I think about Mike's example of the $9,000. What if you told the customer it was $9,000, sent them an invoice for $9,000, but it was actually 90, and then you had to walk that back? That's a pretty
Yeah.
poor customer experience, right? So it's
For a
always
sales
important.
rep, that's a very scary
It's a killer. It's a killer.
scenario. Absolutely. You know, I was reading an article, Brent and Mel, I was reading an article yesterday from Deloitte, and Deloitte said that CFOs are retiring or resigning in record numbers. And they said, you know, that's going to become a real problem with companies, is that they're going to go on the endangered species list along with teachers and lawyers and things like that. And that whole thing is just, it's going to be a problem. And the biggest problem, they said, was frustrations the CFOs are having. They're having all these frustrations, that they've never had before.
Yep.
And yeah, their life needs to be made easier.
So we've touched on this already, but there are a ton of benefits, a ton of reasons to this. What are the outcomes? What are the ROI that you get? I mean, I cannot stress enough the time that you can get back by putting your systems in sync with one another. And then we have a lot of different sayings we use, but one of them is we want you to get back to doing what you do best. And that's not manual exports, manual imports. We also want you to get out of the office. We go to conferences all the time, and accountants and just finance professionals just love a good accounting dad joke. And one that I throw out there all the time is, what is an accountant, or why do accountants love the weekends? And it's because they get to go to work in casual clothes. And it's like funny, but then you also think like, oh, you're working on the weekends. I don't want you to work on the weekends. I want you to go spend time with your family. I want you to get to your kid's soccer game. I want you to enjoy that vacation, right? So when we talk about some of the things that is important, why you should do this, I can't stress enough the importance of just being in the moment and having a good work-life balance. On top of that, we have very tangible things that are business related, like limiting your risk exposure. I mean, how important is that for a finance leader to lead in the organization, how they're going to, mitigate that and not expose themselves too much to getting in major issues. Cash is king, so cash flow management is always super important. And Mel kind of our experience, or talk about the customer experience, which word of mouth is the number one marketing tool out there, right? And if you're creating great customer experiences, they're going to tell other people, you're going to get more business. So having everything buttoned up and just kind of humming along, really kind of helps that. So with us, some of the common use cases that we see across our ecosystem, Mel threw a couple of these up on the slide. We integrate a ton of ERP systems, but again, don't think we're pigeonholed into that. We can integrate anything with an API, but since we're talking to finance professionals, this is where the rubber meets the road, if you will. Billing, we talk about the customer experience and getting that cash in the door faster. When you can actually win an opportunity or a deal, get that to finance so they can send it out the door and get that money into the cash flow. I mean, that's super important. From a nonprofit's perspective, we have probably 30-40% of our customers and partners are nonprofits, and they're taking in donations. They're taking in grants. They have all kinds of monetary gain coming in that they need to now distribute out for the betterment of what their organization's mission statement is. So having that come into the appropriate system, like a Salesforce, and then moving that to finance so they can report on it accurately, whether it be just donations hitting the GL or grants having more detail of how that money is being distributed. We have a lot of workflows out there, and if we can help kind of transform your business and make some of these things easier, we would love to chat. A lot of times we get pigeonholed into like, we have this one problem, but that's because that's the pain. That's the immediate pain, but that's the symptom, not always the illness. And we can take a step back and see, what else it could be causing that, right? Mike, any other thoughts or examples from a use case perspective? Any customers that you know of that would be a good thing to talk about and expose here?
Well, I can give one, in just personal experience as a sales rep. Nothing used to frustrate me more, Brent, than, I have Salesforce as a tool. I can use it. I have it as a tool. However, it only works halfway. I can create a contract in it. I can enter my customer's information. But then after the sale's done, I don't know what's happened. You know, 3 months into it, how long until the contract expires? Is the contract, which contract was it that he signed? I can't remember. Is he making payments? Is he current with his payments? Is he late with his payments? Nothing's more frustrating for a sales rep than to be blind after he sells a customer. And that is just, I can't tell you how frustrating. Every time I have a company come to me and they say, hey, we want to make our Salesforce a complete 360, I'm like, thank you very much. Your sales reps, thank you.
You know what you're signing up for, because it can be a daunting task. Yeah, I think that's fantastic, man. So let's move on. Let's talk about how do we actually accomplish this. So we got these use cases, we got these benefits. How does Venn actually fit into the equation? We do, as I said, integrations, and we have a couple of ways that we can take this and run with it. The next slide, we'll talk about kind of the DIY approach versus how we operate, which is a managed service. So we run all of our integrations on a middleware. So this slide is kind of talking about traditional functions of how you go about integrations. Packaged, meaning we talked a lot about Salesforce. Salesforce has an app exchange. It's fantastic. It's one of the best things about going on into the Salesforce ecosystem is the community, the network, and people trying to make it better. HubSpot has this as well. Stripe has this as well. So there's these packaged integrations that you can click a button, it installs everything for you, and within minutes, hours, you're up and running. A lot of those are free. The custom code is the more traditional route where you have a developer team that can write anything under the sun. We have a saying here as well, we can do anything you want with enough time, scope, and money. Custom code really can hit that hard because you're developing tens of thousands, millions of lines of code sometime to make those systems bend to your will. But it's very cost intensive. Turnover can hose you down the road and what it looks like to spin up a new person that comes in the door. So that's where we go with the middleware. Middleware is a no-code, low-code environment, scalable. Transitioning is easy. When you have someone come on, we already know what that looks like, and you can scale as well as adjust those integrations as you go without going to find that one little thing in the code, 100,000 lines, and you have to hunt and peck for it. Much, much easier with middleware, right? So I already mentioned this as well. How do we go about this? Venn operates as a partner. We want to be a partner with you. And one of the best ways we can do that is to manage the integration for you. We follow the small to mid-size market segment and nonprofits. And most of those teams don't have large developers. So they're looking for ease of use. They're looking for someone to be the expert so they don't have to hire someone to be the expert. So when you think about how are we going to do this, you're asking this question of, do we build it in-house? Do we shop it out? Or do we not do it at all? Right?
And Brent,
and there's
when it's just like the CFO, you were hired to do one thing. If you even if you have a development team, it's unless you really did hire them to be part of to kind of build out an integration strategy. We see this a lot with our SaaS customers or app publishers. The developers are there to improve
their
platform and not necessarily their internal systems. So even if you do have a development team, you may not want your dev resources focused on these integrations, not just the project and implementing it itself, but then ongoing maintenance and updates that requires as you change your processes and as you scale.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. The team you have is incredibly brilliant. Otherwise, you wouldn't have hired them, right? So that can they do the job? Probably so. But even with this first one, the built for you versus built by you, we come across conversations all the time where they're, it's 30 grand to do this or 10 grand to do this or 300 grand. It doesn't matter. They're evaluating, well, I've got a team and they can probably do this. Why would I pay this much versus them doing it? And what they forget is we've got a decade of experience working with these APIs, working with financial workflows. And what that developer has is a decade of experience of writing code for application development. Or they know how to read APIs, but they don't know how to manage financial workflows. So can I connect this object to this object? Probably. But in the middle where the magic happens, the logic and speaking the finance language, they're going to have to take a long time to spin up. And it just doesn't get factored in, right? So there's that level of it. The other one I want to touch on is the support side. So when you build something yourself, you're in charge. You have to support it. Things go wrong and you have turnover, someone's got to be there. From us, one of the things I love the most about Venn and how we work with our partners and customers is we're there when things change. Hopefully nothing goes wrong. I mean, we built it the way it should work. And if nothing changes, it should just function, set it, forget it. But people are going to change their APIs. Businesses are going to grow and scale. You're going to make acquisitions. And now we get this new entity, this new function that needs to change the integration. Well, we're right there ready to go. We know exactly how it works. We know we built it to scale from the foundation up. We're thinking with the end in mind. So that's a huge benefit of going the outsource route is you're not having to have that specially internal where you have this extension of your team that has spent years and years kind of operating through that. So let's keep humming here. We're getting close to the end of time. So let's talk about some of how much the integrations cost. This is a question we get asked all the time. And it makes me so upset to say this, but the answer is always, it depends. What are we talking about? Are we talking about something that exists today and you can go spin up in 5 minutes? Or are we talking about something that's 20 applications that's going to revolutionize your organization and take 6 years for us to put in place, which, by the way, we probably would not take on. That's way too long of a timeline. But it's going to depend. And these are some of the questions that we ask. So as you're thinking through, is this worthwhile for us? Think about some of these questions. How many systems are we talking about? What does the workflow look like? I want to sync a customer from Salesforce to Intact. Cool. What about the other way? Are people going to change stuff in Intact and we need it to go the other way? What about upserting? There's all these like little things that we've learned over the years that can help that. But the workflow, I think, is one of the most crucial parts of understanding how much things are going to cost. The API itself, does it have an API first and foremost? Can we get access to the data that we need to get access to? And does it support the function we need it to? Because some APIs are built different and you can read something, so I can go and see the data, but I can't write something. I can't actually post something into that, which can be frustrating sometimes. So this is what we take care of. We do a lot of this homework for you, but you can help on the front end and kind of work with your IT team to understand how some of your integration or your system applications function out there in the world. Mike, anything else to that from the cost perspective that you've heard on calls or talked with people lately about that would be good to talk through?
No, not really. The one that really sticks in my head is the second from the last, the legacy. Those are the toughest ones. Those are really tough. And it's just because they're all very different. They all, have their own platform at your establishment or somewhere, close by. And it takes time to go through a discovery, figure it out, see what kind of what the data actually looks like, even if we can get to it. And that's probably the toughest one out there to crack. But, we do a really good job in doing it.
A lot of them are very industry specific as well, which can be, you asked, have you integrated between this real estate specific application and Intact? Well, no, because no one has integrated between that application. But as long as we can access the data, we certainly can. And what they're looking for is a standard workflow. Well, we can create one, but it doesn't exist today because it's so industry specific. Let's go to the next slide, Mel, and let's kind of start landing the plane here. At Venn, we pride ourselves, if you will, on not not hiding behind things. So when we talk about costs, we always want to be as transparent as possible. And even though the question is, it depends, we still have an idea of where we're going to land. So if you ever ask us this question, we're going to be as forthcoming as we possibly can. So we wanted to throw this out and give you an idea of, we categorize integrations in 3 buckets. This in-app side, think about, you have an application that you're running today, and there's the button in there that you can just install this and keep running. That's what that is. Generally, those are free, very, very low dollar add-ons, but a lot of times it's produced by the software themselves. So if Salesforce had an in-app purchase, they're running that, they can make it free because they own it. They're getting you on the platform. We can help install these things, but this is a really good point to the ethos of how we operate. If something exists already, we're not looking to reinvent the wheel. I love taking people's money, but I only like to do it if it makes sense. And in that case, I don't need to redesign something if someone has already spent a ton of time and money to take care of it. The next bucket is our standard integrations or standard workflows. These are things that exist out in the wild, like the HubSpot Salesforce integration. They have a great standard integration that is either free or relatively cheap. And it takes some configuration, so you need to know some knowledge, but for the most part, it's a pretty easy lift. Those are things we help install. Plus, we have ourselves standard workflows that we've developed between systems. Mel, you mentioned HubSpot and Intact earlier. HubSpot and Intact is one of our standard workflows that we do at a very light configuration. And if you fall outside of that standard workflow, you need something else, we can certainly add on. But at least we've recognized the market has a need for this. Our Stripe and Intact integration is one of those as well. So those can fall from an implementation point in the low thousands, the 5,000 range, to 15K or so. It can be a little more, but it just depends on what your custom on top of standard could look like. And then we have, the bigger ones where these standard workflows don't exist today. We're using a new application, or we're not doing a quote to cash model inside of Salesforce Intact. We need to push time entries, right? There's no standard workflow for that, but we have done it, and we can build it out. Most of those are not going to really come anywhere under 20 to 25K. And they could certainly go up into the multi 6 figures, depending on what you need. I think the average custom, when you start talking about like a Salesforce Intact integration, is somewhere in the 35, 40 range. So don't etch that in stone. Don't go back and think it's gospel, but hopefully it gives you an idea of what you should be thinking about for your budget and your planning about the ROI of this side of the house. And then included with this, so talking about outsourcing, why it's important to do that. Including in what we do is there's a level of that managed service. We're here for you. We want to be partners for the long haul, and be there for when those changes take place, when project 2 comes up. We're there as your first line of events and to support. And then ultimately, and Mel, I'm on the next slide now, the last thing, going back to building in-house versus building outside, is the time that you save. We're going to say this is a 3-month project, and we're going to do everything we possibly can to hit that 3-month goal, working in lockstep with you. But we understand you have 9 to 5 jobs and responsibilities as well, plus your developers do, right? So generally something that we do in 3 months would take an internal team 9 months or 12 months minimum, because they're trying to support existing functions while do internal work too. So there's a lot of benefits for outsourcing and the technical expertise that you get, but time savings can be a huge one with that. So
yeah, Brent, I was going to say in that same, on that topic, I was going to say a lot of the customers I talk to, they say, we were looking at doing it ourselves. However, we had an employee leave, we had something happen, and now they're stuck and they need us to bail them out. Very common.
Absolutely. Well, guys, I really appreciate y'all hanging out with us. Mel, generally we do questions, right? Any questions that have come through that we need to pepper away?
We haven't had any questions. Quite group today.
Great.
One of the things I would like to touch on real quick before we let everyone go, because I think it is another important point that not really think we covered here was talked about cost, which is a big one. A lot of times we have clients and partners ask around timeline. I know your answer is going to be, it depends.
It depends.
But
Yeah.
can you kind of give a general,
Yeah, so let's talk about our standard workflows for a second. Those we have built to meet 90% of the market, right? If you use HubSpot and Intact, most likely you're syncing deals over to Intact and you're creating orders or invoices, et cetera. Our goal with those standard workflows is to have them deployable, is that a word? Have them out the door within days. If we know all the information, we config it, you test it, we could be live within days. Most of our standard integrations are running a couple of weeks to get out the door. And that's, again, you have 9 to 5 jobs. We get it. We don't get 40 hours of your time. So think that, couple of weeks. On the custom side, the average project is about 3 months, could be a little over 3 months, which we do a lot of work where an ERP is being implemented at the same time. So we're running in tandem with them and they take about the same process too. So it all depends. But if this is something that we have productized a couple of weeks, if it's something that it's going to be a little more custom, planned for several months. And then obviously the more stuff you add on, it can go to 4 to 6, so forth. We try not to do things. If there's a project that's going to take more than 6 months, then we need to take that project and divide it up and do something a little more bite-sized. That way we can get something of value out the door faster. And then we can come on the back end and do phase 2, phase 3, et cetera.
Makes sense. All right, unless y'all have anything else to add, I think we are going to go ahead and wrap up for today. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. We will get a link of the recording out to your email. And if you have any questions, reach out. You can always go to our website, fill out a form, or if you're already a friend of ours, because there are a few knowns on the call, drop us an email if anything came up. Let us know what you thought of the webinar, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, guys. Everyone. Have a good one.